Hi, so I'm going to be kicking us off with a theme that we're going to be exploring over the next 4 or 5 weeks, which is the practice of internationality. Now you may wonder how those words go together, but I hope by the end of the evening you're a little bit clearer about what that means. But really what it consists in is kind of intensifying our mindfulness of our international interactions, possibly even intensifying their occurrence, kind of going abroad or whatever, living abroad. But yeah, I hope by the end of the evening, this particular evening we're going to spend on how is internationality a practice. That's what we explore. But before kind of saying very much about it, I thought let's just go into let's just practice a bit of mindfulness. So we do a bit of mindfulness of breathing, or actually probably just body awareness, and then talk from that. Yeah. Great. So yeah. As I say, I hope this I'm sure will become clearer, kind of what we're exploring through the evening. But I'm going to be drawing from a sutta so that's basically the Buddha kind of teaching, and usually it rises out of him just sort of bumping into someone, and then this teaching kind of comes out, and that's true in this case, and it's called the Honeyball Sutta. For no other reason than the monks really loved it, and they said it's like tasting something sweet as honey when you're hungry. So they called it the Honeyball Sutta, so they really, really liked it. And what it's really doing, it actually offers us an analysis of mind. That's what it offers us. But the context is the Buddha basically saying that he teaches how to be a harmonious person, and that is he clarifies not quarrelling with anybody in the world. So that has some bearing on our subject of internationality. I'm sure. We haven't been quarrelling today, but it's still very relevant. You don't have to be a quarreller to qualify for this teaching. It's kind of basically the Buddha found himself in a situation where there were a whole plethora of views and practices. So it's about kind of how to be a harmonious person when others have views and practices different from our own. That kind of very particular sort of experience where you encounter someone who's got a very, very different view from you, or goes about life in a very, very different way. It's sort of it can catch you by surprise. Very, very particular experience, isn't it? When you have a strong experience of that, a view that you've never encountered before, can sort of even slightly unsettle you. But that's what the Buddha was talking about. So, I just want to unfold this so that we can start to get a sense of, well, why think of internationality as a practice and how to go about it, basically. As I say, what the Buddha offers is not so much advice or explanation. He offers an analysis of mind. He offers us effectively a sort of nidana chain, and I'll add that I'm drawing very much from Subhuti, a much loved teacher in our movement, who's kind of drawn this sutta out a lot, which people very much appreciated. Yeah, so as I say, it sort of gives us a kind of nidana chain, i.e. a kind of sequence of mental conditions, so that we can kind of look into our experience and see how our experience unfolds. So that's what I'm going to do. Just take us through that. So it's going to involve pens and flip charts, which I'm not the best at, so wish me luck. So the starting point let's put the translation in. Is sparsha. So this is the Pali word, and it means contact. So let's put a few words in, some of which you might recognise. So this is where the Buddha starts us off. In a way, that the situation that he's addressing is sort of conflict, and he brings us right back to contact. So what's been got at here is that most of the time, very often, we're not actually very in contact with our direct experience. We tend to think we are, but often not. That's what we were doing in the meditation, just sort of trying to get back into contact, direct contact with our actual experience. This is the starting point of mindfulness, isn't it? Just actually experiencing the direct sensation. So just as I'm talking, you can do that with your feet. You can feel your feet on the ground, and just by doing that, somehow it sort of changes your sense of yourself. So that's what this has been got at. That's what's been got at. I mean, to be clearer, we're often actually in touch with an idea. So I don't know if you could see that in the meditation, catch yourself kind of with an idea, an image, a mental image of your feet. It can even be quite strong, that actually you're just seeing an outline, aren't you? Which is an idea. It's not actually a direct experience. And much of our life we're actually not experiencing very much contact. I suppose another example of this is the artists. So there's this idea, isn't there, the artists, painters, kind of show us how to see. For example, the Impressionists kind of showing us that shadow actually has colour, or that smoke. For me, I find this really, really interesting. When I see smoke, I just try to look more carefully at it, because smoke, as we all know, is grey, isn't it? But it's not. If you look at it, sometimes smoke is blue. I don't know why it's blue. I don't know what science is going on in that moment. It's not always blue. I don't know why it's not always blue. But that's the truth of it. But actually, we can be sort of living our lives, actually perceiving ideas. Someone says, what colour was that smoke? You're like, oh, well, it was grey, wasn't it? But it wasn't. It wasn't, because we're not in contact with it. And that is true for our bodies as well. Oddly, you sort of think, just by being human, that you are in contact, by being embodied, you are in contact with your body, but oddly we're not. I just realised for myself that for 10 years I've been doing the same sort of exercise routine. I tell myself that that it's good for me, but I don't enjoy it. That's okay. I don't have to enjoy it because it's good for me. And I just discovered on the meditation challenge back in September that actually it's enjoyable. It's actually pleasant. But I didn't know that because I wasn't actually attending to I wasn't actually in contact with my body. It was more an idea of my body and an idea of the exercise that I was doing, which is not my preferred exercise, and therefore, do you see what I mean? So actually I wasn't even able to notice the simple physical experience that this is sort of largely enjoyable. So that's what the Buddha here is inviting us to start with. So whatever our experience of kind of difference, whether that sort of big fallout, or whether actually it's just a sort of quiet difference. You all go about, they can go about their own business quietly. I don't understand at all, why they do it like that. But I'm going to sort of keep the peace. That is another sort of example of this kind of slight separation, division. And yeah, so the Buddha invites us back to contact, to come back into our immediate experience. And what we find if we do that is that all sparsa, whether it's visual, whether it's touch, actually you can come into contact with your mind state as well. You might have done that in the meditation and realised that your mind state, realised what your mind state was. Prior to that you weren't as clear. But every sparsha has a Vedana, So Vedana gets technically translated as hedonic tone. Many of you will have heard of this, some of you won't have heard of it before. But really it's just that experience is either pleasant or unpleasant, or uncomfortable, or it's just so faint that we can't really distinguish whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. So every kind of contact has that. Mostly it's so faint that we don't really notice it. But this is a really crucial element of experience that the Buddha invites us to attend to. Actually, it's sometimes called the battleground of the spiritual life, Vedana. And that's because Vedana is such a big part of how things play out. Mostly kind of what happens in the world is just a playing out of Vedana. But that's not what we think. So that's why the Buddha is kind of inviting us. So just to remind you, this is all an analysis of mind, but basically an invitation to deepen your mindfulness. That's the context in which the Buddha is sort of talking about this. So yeah, if we deepen our mindfulness, we start to become aware of this aspect of Vedana. Yeah. So it's curious that we managed to sort of not notice this, but it's true. I was listening to Maitreya talking about it, and he was giving the example, well actually gives two examples. One is a dinner party. So we kind of subconsciously kind of know this, understand the significance of Vedana. And he gives the example of a dinner party, that actually at a dinner party what we're doing is we're just kind of setting up the lighting, setting up the food, a nice kind of cloth on the table, flowers. Actually we're just attending to Vedana. what we're doing is we're just trying to set up pleasant Vedanas. Because we know that if we do that, people are likely to get into a good mood. Yeah. So we know that this underlying quality of experience, intrinsic to experience, is kind of the way to go about that. We don't think about it, but we just unconsciously kind of know that. So that's a lot of what we're doing in our lives without quite realising it. And it's also, as I say, what's at play in a lot of how things unfold. So another example that he gave actually was just the train. He said on the news there was this case where a mother and child had been trying to get on the train, and there was a fracas, and in the end she ended up punching somebody. So you sort of think, how on earth did that happen? But he was pointing out how actually, if you just look at the Vedana, you can see how something like that would happen. That it was right at the end of the week, right at the end of the day. The trains had been cancelled. It was very, very hot, summer day. So there you are on the train. You've been standing up. Well, that gives rise to unpleasant Vedanas. Unless you're young and fit, having to stand up is uncomfortable. You're in the heat, so that's more unpleasant Vedana. And then usually what's happening at that time is the carriage is too crowded, isn't it? Somebody talking on their phone, that's unpleasant, isn't it? And we don't respond very well, particularly if you're tired. We don't deal with that very well. We don't manage to sort of regulate ourselves very well. What very easily can happen is we actually just sort of end up spreading more unpleasant Vedana around. You know that thing where somebody kind of rolls their eyes and they want you to, or you do it, you want them to sort of agree. I guess it's just that I'm experiencing this unpleasant experience, and I want some kind of empathy. Will you join in with me? But actually, what happens is you're sort of acting on a level of irritation, aren't you? And an irritable mental state too has Vedana. It has an unpleasant Vedana. Generally, unskillful mental states, generally they have an unpleasant Vedana to them, accompanying them, not always, and generally positive mental states have a pleasant Vedana accompanying them, but not always. So there we are, we just managed to sort of spread around the Vedana, around the carriage a bit more. You end up with a carriage of people who are kind of grumpy, and then the train stops, and when the train stops, a crowded carriage, you can get that sort of horrible sense that, oh God, there's too many people in the way, maybe I'm not going to get off. You generally always do get off, but you can still get that sort of sense, can't you? And it's unpleasant, so more unpleasant Vedana. So possibly what was happening for the woman kind of trying to get off, and what you do in that situation, you're tired, you push, and as she reaches the door, there's somebody pushing the other way. Somebody who's got a child, there's that, you're concerned for your child, protective, sees that the carriage is full. The carriage perhaps even sort of crowd in, you don't want a pushchair on, there isn't enough room sort of thing. That sort of gives rise to more unpleasant Vedana for the mother. You can see how in the wrong conditions, tired, actually something can just sort of kind of blow up like that. Anyway, so I just thought that was a really good example of how something very, very ordinary kind of situation like being on the train, but we don't notice actually that what's really sort of at play is lots of Vedanas, lots and lots of Vedanas. We think we're sort of making conscious, rational decisions, but actually we're sort of pushed in a way by Vedana. Once you sort of gone down that route of being slightly irritated, it's very hard to sort of to retrieve it, isn't it? The boat has departed, sort of thing, and then you're in a grump. So there we are, Sparsha Vedana. Incidentally, if there's anything that doesn't make sense, just interrupt me through this, because there's quite a lot to it. And then Samya. So the Buddha's inviting us to kind of look at this aspect of perception. So, so this, in a way, is our sort of simple, direct experience. Here, you could. Subhuti calls it primary. Sorry about my writing. Primary experience. So the last one, perception. So all these three things kind of come together, basically. They're sort of enumerated as though they're separate things, but if you look into your experience, you can't actually ever have a Vedana arising without sparsha, without contact. You can't actually have a perception without Vedana. It all kind of arises as one. So this experience is what we share with the animal kingdom. So animals too. Hi, Ezra.
Can you explain perception a little bit?
Yeah, I need to say something about that, don't I? Yeah. Yeah, so with perception, so that's it's interesting. My girlfriend's cat's blind, and I was walking up to it, and it started to kind of arch its back, and zzz, it isn't able, almost blind. I was too far away to be able to see what was happening, but it was actually starting to perceive threat. There's some kind of unknown thing coming. So that's something that we share, just this very basic level of there you are, I can see that's Ezra, and Ezra can see Arthasiddhi and Wall, and that very, very basic level of sort of understanding, recognising the sensations that are coming in. Because you know how you can have that experience of not recognising it. Maybe you look across the room and you can't quite work out the common, the placement of legs and arms or something like that in the chair. And you kind of, ooh, and then you realise, oh, they're sitting that way around. Oh, that was weird. So it's talking about that moment of recognition. That's what's being talked about. So yeah, this is our primary experience, and with mindfulness we're always coming back to this. As I say, it's shared with the animal kingdom. So when a cat recognises dog, that's intrinsically unpleasant. Dog is recognised unless it's a known dog that's friendly and they cuddle up together. Generally, that recognition comes coupled with an unpleasant Vedana, because that recognition is a recognition of sort of threat. You see what I mean? Hi, Jonathan.
Sorry, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Doesn't that imply a causality in a different direction from Samya to Vedana, rather than sort of that the Samya causing Vedana rather than Vedana causing Samya?
Yeah. So what it seems, if you look into your experience, actually is that they just arrive the same time. So you can't, it's not like you you recognise a threat and then you have a Vedana. It's like actually the recognition of threat is accompanied by Vedana. Yeah, yeah. So you can't actually sort of break them down in terms of time. As soon as you recognise threat, there is a Vedana that arises with it. So the whole thing really kind of comes together. Contact, Samya, Vedana. That is our primary experience, firing off sort of all the time. Yeah, otherwise you'd be able to sort of, you'd actually, you might be able to sort of put a greater gap between the perception and the Vedana. That's not what happens actually. You perceive a threat and then it instantly sort of affects you. You can then become mindful of that, but it's already, the Vedana has sort of already kind of happened, as it were. So Vedana is just a given, coupled to perception and contact. Contact without perception, I mean, I suppose technically you can sort of have that in that example where you can't quite work out what's going on. Yeah, that's just sort of perception not sort of working. And is that really contact? Because you don't know what you're in contact with, do you see what I mean? So anyway, the point is to come back to this primary experience. That's what we're trying to do. That we're often not in. We're often instead in a thought of primary experience, not in the primary experience itself. So that's the next thing that that arises. So vitarka means thought. Just checking time, I have to speed up a little bit. So, yeah, this is what we don't share, or only to a very small degree, with the animal kingdom. So we have this ability to actually kind of think. Now, apparently the word vi is to divide and tarka is reason. So it doesn't mean that in a pejorative sense. It means kind of the ability to sort of step back from your experience, divide off from your experience, as it were, to think about it, to notice it. So it's simply like that experience of being in the train and going, oh, I'm tired, I'm starting to lose my initiative over my mental states and get in a mood. That's what it is. That we can actually do that. We can sort of step back from experience as opposed to being completely at the mercy of our primary experience. That's what's being got at with vitarka. So this is actually kind of it's kind of essentially what mindfulness is. Another way of translating it, Achabandha translates it as integrated intelligence. And that's because with vitarka, it's not speculative. It's not kind of speculating about what's going on. I guess we've got a tendency, haven't we, to think of thinking as and good thinking, even be impressed by kind of complexity. But actually some of that complexity can be very speculative and totally unrelated to actual experience. It's quite possible to be quite impressed by some sort of theory that's actually not related to experience. So that is different from what is being talked about here. So it's just this sort of ability to actually think back into experience, think in a way that actually refers to experience. And that's what we're doing when we're mindful. It's much harder than it sounds. We probably think we're doing it much more than we're doing it. Actually, it's sort of, if you look at your experience, we're able to do it for periods of time. Be aware of what's going on in our experience. Be aware, oh, I'm getting hungry, I better stop work, because otherwise I'll start to, the quality of my work will go down. I'll just go and have a bite to eat. That's actually vitarka going on. It's something that babies don't have. They haven't as yet developed, have they? They just cry, but they don't know why they're uncomfortable necessarily, and the parent has to work out why they're uncomfortable. So that's what we're doing in mindfulness, this kind of stepping back, bending back awareness into what's going on, back into experience. Yeah, so with us, actually, well, probably we need to put up a few more words. So, puncture. So there's this other sort of thought that we don't really have a translation of. Prapancha can be translated as kind of alienated intelligence when we are thinking, but actually it's one quality of prapancha is that it's sort of automatic. And it doesn't refer back to experience, refer back into experience. It's sort of, it's associative, so it sort of draws different things together. The sort of thing that can lead to feeling really annoyed, really fed up with someone who's talking on their phone. There they are, actually just getting uncomfortable. So one of the things about prapancha is that it's a working out of Vedana. There's some unpleasant Vedana arising in our experience, and if that is happening, the tendency, vitarka, it might start as vitarka, but very easily it drifts into prapancha, drifts into this sort of associative automatic thinking. It's actually trying to work out, trying to solve the experience of Vedana, the uncomfortable experience, but it does that oddly without being related, without actually sort of being aware of what it is. So what's happening there is we may start off thinking, oh, I wish that guy would stop on his phone. And then before we know it, we're kind of thinking this always happens. So there we are, we've made a connection, haven't we? with a previous memory that when this happened before, this, I was on the train and this guy was talking, it's always happening. It's not true, is it? But we kind of put two things together. That's what prapancha does. So prapancha is essentially thought that has got caught up in anushaya. Anushaya is our underlying tendencies. So if you've got a bit of a tendency to complain, feel sorry for yourself, that's what comes up in prapancha. That's what plays out in prapancha. You start thinking this always happens. Yep. So Buddhism distinguishes these two sorts of thoughts: vitarka, which is integrated intelligence, and crucial, what sort of saves us, and prapancha. It's actually not that easy in experience to distinguish between the two. All too easily we think we're in vitarka, when in actual fact we're just in a story, same old story, victim story, or whatever it is, whatever your chosen story is, that will start to be played out in prapancha, in your automatic thinking. So perhaps just the last thing to say about vitarka is just that that is kind of natural to a Buddha. The Buddha was called nisprapancha, so an enlightened mind never kind of passes over into prapancha. There are no underlying Amrachandra's thinking that would be great. Enlightened mind sort of never passes over into prapancha. It's always sort of established in that kind of, look what's going on here, what would be helpful to do. Whereas for us, it's kind of intermittent, isn't it? If we're honest, it sort of flickers on. We're able to be mindful for the whole morning. And then for 2 days, we're kind of lost in prapancha without even realising it before we come out the other. Or is that just you? Sorry, just me. So there we are. That's sort of that's where the spiritual life is kind of worked out in that area. But the next, I think we're ready for the next step. Yes, just one other thing to say. Anushaya, it's likened to the mud at the bottom of a river. So because of the currents of our mind, so the habits of our mind, it sort of shapes the bottom of the river, shapes and patterns it. So those are our underlying kind of tendencies that will actually start to shape how the currents of prapancha. Yeah.
Let's just check out to see, is vitarka, integrated intelligence, is this kind of appropriate thoughts to the situation, or is it creative, or what, or all of that and more? Or?
Yeah, well, if it is actually referred back to experience, then yes, it stands a chance of being helpful and creative, as opposed to one other translation from prapancha is just complexifying. It comes from a word to spread out. So that's what prapancha does. It'll often seem to provide us with some sort of solution, but it's actually just sort of it just complexifies. Whereas vitarka, because it relates back to experience, it stands a chance of being helpful. Actually, you might get it wrong, mightn't you? But you can work that out and have another vitarka and point yourself in the right direction. So, yeah, that's the nature of vitarka. So it's a bit broader than just creative thinking, but it's integrated intelligence. Yeah. So some things you think might be more helpful than others, but as long as you're engaged in integrated thinking, you're going to find some sort of creative solution, to whatever's going on. Yeah. Does that make sense?
So it's not really associative in the same way that propension is.
That's right. Yeah. It's not pulling things together that aren't actually.
It's a bit more. It's had a bit more logic and rationale to it.
Well, it refers back into experience. That's the distinguishing quality of it. So in that sense, it is it's related to the reality of what's going on. Yeah. So logical in that sense. Yeah.
Can I try and pull it together just using your story of the being in a hot train?
Yeah.
So, hot day on a train is contact. Being in the carriage is contact, and then my temperature rising, and maybe some smells and things like that. That's the contact of what sort of. The feeling tone. The feeling tone of it is becoming uncomfortable, and then the perception is, I'm uncomfortable. It's hot.
Well, that's vitarka.
That's vitarka. So but then there's an awareness of it, isn't it? That's mindfulness. There's awareness of hot, smelly.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit panicked or something.
Yeah.
So that's the mindfulness moment.
Yeah.
And then from that comes I'm hot. This carriage is smelly. So I could just stay there, couldn't I? It's like, this is it's hot, it's smelly, and now the carriage isn't going anywhere. But then I start going, why did I wear this jacket? I'm an idiot. Why? I always wear the wrong clothes. British Rail, bring it back. I didn't bring any water. That person over there, why do they stand like that? All that sort of, that's going off in papancha. But I could just stay with, I'm wearing a heavy jacket today. I must look at the weather before I leave home.
So
that would be back with.
Or even it's hot. It's the end of the day. I'm tired. There's nothing I can do about it.
There's nothing I can do about it.
Let's just relax. And let's watch out for the mind spinning off, because that's just not going to help.
Exactly.
So that would be vitarka.
Yeah. So in that moment, you can recognise what's going on and then do that regulation.
That's it.
There's nothing to do here. It's like, maybe I'll take my jacket off.
Yeah. That's it. Yes, that's vitarka. And the last thing is rather complicated to write. Pancha. Is Prapancha Samya Sankha. So that's all one term, Prapancha Samya Sankha. So sam is together, and kya is to know. So basically, it's sort of saying, one simple translation of this might just be kind of constructed perception. So going from this primary experience of being on the train up through Prapancha, what happens is at some point that kind of chattery Prapancha, it kind of clicks into a story. It clicks into a story, this is what's happening. Or a story, or a kind of a world view, basically. It sort of sets into a kind of construction of this is what's going on. Yeah. So that's the whole of the chain.
I mean, the vitarka is like that happens in the gap, doesn't it? The Vedana, you've then got the gap, you've got the opportunity to be creative, or you can go into the prapancha cycle, which is craving and aversion.
Yeah.
So that the vitarka is the bit that allows you to step out of that.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the vitarka sort of is the stepping out and sort of realising this is what's going on. Yeah. Yeah. So, with this prapancha samya sankhara, it's probably sort of floating a little bit unclearly in your mind as to what that is, but it kind of, you click into a kind of story, into a kind of a view of the world, sort of into a film, if you like. Suddenly you're on this train, and this is just what happens, you know. You may no longer be kind of particularly sort of discursive, but this is the way it's happened, and this woman's kind of in my way, and perhaps a clearer example. Sometimes this kind of thought construction, it can be given to us. So if we take the example of someone who's just lost their job, and they're reading the papers and it says that immigrants are taking our jobs. Click. So you can see what's happened. Uncomfortable Vedana. An uncomfortable Vedana has lost job, really uncomfortable, has left in this sort of state of prapancha, trying to work out what's happened here, and pick up the paper, provides you with this story, clicks into place, then that is what's happening. That is what's happening. So this secondary that is our secondary, what Subhuti calls secondary experience. And he calls it secondary experience because actually when that happens, you read that in the paper, click, all of the Vedana Samya Sparsha that arises from that moment arises through that story. So that person then kind of bumps into their neighbour who they otherwise sort of got on well with, but they're an immigrant, and suddenly they're seeing their neighbour as an unpleasant, he's another one who's sort of threatening my job prospects. Do you see what I mean? So actually the Vedana that arises is arising not on the basis of primary experience, but on the basis of secondary experience. So you come to live in a kind of secondary reality without fully realising it, removed, dislocated from our primary experience.
So that'd be the second dart. You've already had the first dart.
That's another teaching, isn't it? On this area. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Perhaps we'll not draw that in because there's probably enough on the board.
I wonder, does it actually change the primary experience, or does it change prapancha? Because it can be like the Vedana stays the same, with exercise and the Vedana was actually pleasant. It was just staying with the in your head it was unpleasant, but actually, so I wonder whether the primary experience actually can be changed, or we just interpret it later differently because of the secondary experience.
Yeah. Well, it's that word samya is in both the primary and the secondary. So actually what you perceive is perceived through a kind of thought construction. Therefore the Vedana that arises from that arises on the basis of what's perceived. So this is where the practice of internationality kind of comes in, because this is where we live most of the time. And when we practice mindfulness, we get closer to this. But the practice of internationality comes in here. Incidentally, just before I go into that, actually, one of the unfortunate things that can happen is that the neighbour, the way the neighbour responds, because the neighbour's been responded to differently, can start to sort of feed back. Doesn't like being kind of related to in this way for God knows why, what reason. Takes the huff and actually does sort of become a bit more hostile themselves. You see what I mean? So oddly, this can actually pull experience kind of towards it. But what can happen with the practice of internationality is it can cut through to vitarka. So what I mean by the practice of internationality is actually kind of giving more attention to interactions, being more mindful, intensifying our mindfulness of interactions, international interactions. So, little example, I live across the road and lived with quite a few Indians, and one point a guy from South India, Vinnath, many people will know him, was cooking, decided to eat as he was in the habit of eating in India. So he was eating with his hand. And I'd never done this before, never seen this before. And actually what came up for me was this sort of shock, even sort of slight horror. Oh my God, the idea was fine, but actually when I saw him, he's got food all up his hands, I was kind of, to my amazement, I was sort of shocked by it. And that was a moment of, aha, okay, this is really interesting, isn't it? What's happening here? This is to do with secondary experience. This is just to do with my conditioning. It's the way I've been brought up. And of course, eating with knives and forks, that's what grown-ups do, isn't it? That's kind of civilised. All that sort of conditioning, food conditioning is very, very early, isn't it? And it was starting to show me that I was living in a secondary experience, do you see what I mean? Secondary reality, without realising it. That is the problem of this. Without things like being in contact with other nationalities, we don't realise the extent to which we're living in a constructed reality that's of our own making and divorced from our primary experience. So that kind of shocked me, and later I was kind of eating with my hand and absolutely loving it, actually. So you can kind of move through. There's even an element of sort of disgust. That's kind of quite strong experience. But it was just showing me my conditioning, this sort of secondary experience, and a stronger experience of it was with a good friend, Arthasiddhi. And it was around this, who's also Indian, around this area of making arrangements. So we arranged to meet up, and then he wouldn't turn up, and what's going on here, and instead of sort of avoiding that, deciding to kind of go into it, deciding to talk about it, take an interest in what is his experience of this, because and what came out was he's like really shocked that friends in England, if a friend turns up on the door unannounced just before dinner, they'll open the door and say, well, we haven't made an arrangement. What are you doing here? He's like, but how come you wouldn't just automatically invite them in? He was kind of totally shocked. And it took actually, it was quite a careful conversation I had to go into, because it's just too easy when you've got these completely different understandings of how to go about things, different cultures. It's very, very easy to sort of for it to get a bit sort of fractious, to not to be able to kind of stay with Vitarka and primary experience. But actually, we did manage to do that, and the experience just took me. It took me somewhere else. I kind of found that I was sort of taken out of my own conditioning. I could see actually my whole conditioning around sort of friendship actually works out in this way, that you kind of make arrangements and you stick with arrangements, and it's the sticking with arrangements that indicates that you're into the friendship. That was all sort of quite unconscious to me, but that's actually sort of how it worked, and that was all sort of exposed. That conditioning was all sort of surfaced into awareness, and I could see how you could approach this a completely different way. Actually, just a much more responsive sort of culture of friendship, whereby you drop things when your friend turns up. It's not my natural mode. It's not the culture that I've been brought up in, but I can move a bit in that direction. But it just sort of, it was a beautiful moment, because I was just there left with this other person who'd grown up, you know, with this particular different secondary reality, different cultural conditioning from mine, and suddenly that was all just sort of relativized. We were just sort of two people at the mercy of conditioning that was not of our choosing, that we just sort of absorbed by our cultures, and somehow by talking about it we were both not that. That wasn't us. Do you see what I mean? So what started to come into experience was what is much deeper in human consciousness, beyond conditioning, some glimpse of what the Buddha called the unconditioned, that there is something deep in consciousness that's beyond all that, that's not, somehow not touched by all that. That's what I got put in touch with. So just sort of really expansive sense, and didn't just bring a sense of connection with him, but a sense of connection actually with other people through that culture. Suddenly it wasn't a barrier, a disconnect. Previously I hadn't been able to understand it fully. That disconnect just sort of fell away. So that's where Vitarka is sort of leading. It leads to this kind of profoundly enriched experience of our primary experience. Yeah. So yeah, I hope those two examples kind of draw out a little bit more what the practice of internationality is, and how it helps us see that we're living in a secondary experience. If we can see it, then you can start to go, oh, but hang on a minute, this doesn't make sense. We can eat like that, or we can eat like that. We can start to, with Vitarka, actually kind of reason with experience. That's another way that Vitarka is divided reason. So it relates a little bit to what you were saying about logic, doesn't it? We can start to reason with our experience and extricate ourselves from this sort of constructed reality that only serves to divide us from other people that don't share it. So there we are. That's we've come full distance. Are there any stray ends to Ezra? Of course, you've got one.
Yes. Sorry, I'm an anthropologist, so it's exactly my field. I'm so excited.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So I guess we have to have secondary experiences, right? You know, as humans, we have to have a theory of friendship. Otherwise, life would be so confusing, right? That if I don't know who is my friend, who is not, so I have to have a theory of it. But at the same time, also we have, as humans, the capacity of to be understand different cultures, and then to be able to get out of it. So in a way, that is with your friend, maybe it is the contact of your secondary experiences. That is what is happening, and you're surprised by it, and now together you have a vitarka about it.
That's right, yeah. What tends to happen with secondary experience, we actually probably don't need to have a secondary experience, I think.
But would it be so confusing? Like,
well,
how do I know who is my friend?
Yeah. What I mean by that is secondary experience is something that we take for reality. Do you see what I mean?
Right.
Instead, we can have a theory that's entirely conscious, but what's happening with secondary experience is it kind of it becomes the world in which we live. Do you see what I mean? It's more than a theory, it's a reality. So we're living in this reality, and then we bump up against someone who says, no, it's not like that, and you can actually be quite shaken by it.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's also how we think someone is our friend, just because it fits that category, but actually that friend, let's say, keeps disappointing us or not.
Yeah, that's right.
Can I ask a question, something I'm really pondering on? I think I can distinguish between the samya and the vedana. So perception is, I'm thinking about people with anxiety problems, OCD, panic disorder, whatever. So like people with OCD have irrational fears, like, if I don't wash my hands 20 times I will get a disease and die. And the vedana is the feeling tone that makes that feel real. It makes that perception feel real. I'm just trying to work out where sparsha comes into that. If you imagine for a second, you're someone with OCD and you're thinking, oh, if I don't wash my hands 20 times, I'm going to die. And the vedana is the anxiety that's making that feel more real. I just don't know where the sparsha comes into that.
Yeah, well, sparsha, in that instance, I suppose sparsha would be actually come into contact with that thought.
Yeah, so simply just being, the thought being there in the first place.
Yeah. And on the basis of that thought, what did you say the thought was? Oh God, I need to wash my
hands 20 times or I'll die.
Then there's a Vedana that arises. Anxiety.
I guess the thought is there's germs, I'm going to catch the germs.
Yeah.
So the Vedana is negative or unpleasant, and so the perception is I need to wash my hands.
Like you were saying about the cat with the fret.
Yeah, well, I think actually the samya, it is in, it's tricky, isn't it? But the samya would be germs, wouldn't it? Germs which has an immediate Vedana with it,
right.
And it is also contact. Yeah, whether that be actually just with the idea of germs, it sounds like that's what's going on.
Yeah, another question I just had as well on the topic of vitarka. Is vitarka essentially mindfulness then?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's sort of, I don't quite know.
It's the thought that is directly connected to the experience. That's the key thing about it.
Yeah, it is.
It's the thing that's connected to your experience. So you're reflecting on, I see that I'm feeling this.
Yeah.
Whereas the prapancha is taking you away into your story.
Yeah.
So I think this is why the vitarka gives you the opportunity for creative action in this situation.
Yeah.
And then you're on a spiral path.
Yeah, that's right.
Whereas if you go off into the prapancha, then you're in your alienated space where you're in your self-contained story and there's no opportunity for creativity and you're just going to repeat your habitual actions.
That's right. Yeah. And I think that that therefore vitarka is a function of mindfulness. It's an aspect of mindfulness, but it's not the whole thing, because sometimes in some moments of mindfulness you're not thinking. So it's mindful thinking, if you see what I mean. It's
Yeah, the
mindful-
reason I brought that up was
Yeah.
because of what that lady said earlier about
Yeah,
Vedana rises, but there is that moment we can have between Vedana and I think it was Prapancha, whereby we can go into Vitarka and be mindful,
yeah,
and that can ultimately reduce the Vedana.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah. Any last questions before we have a tea break? Sure, people are experiencing some level of uncomfortable waiting. Great. Okay, well let's go into tea break. But I hope it's drawn out enough. What are the possibilities of this practice of internationality? What's the value of intensifying our contacts with other nationalities, communication with other nationalities, in order to actually start to go deeper and allow some of our assumptions to start to surface and become